Imagine you are born into a country where everyone speaks a language you don't understand. Money is that language. If you cannot read or speak it, you will struggle no matter how hard you work. Financial literacy is the ability to understand money and use it wisely to make good financial decisions throughout your life. It is not about being rich. It is not about earning a high salary. It is about understanding how money works and making decisions that improve your financial future. What is financial literacy? Financial literacy is the knowledge, skills, habits, and judgment needed to earn, manage, save, spend, invest, protect, and grow money wisely. Notice something important. Knowledge alone is not enough. A person may know everything about money but still make poor decisions. Financial literacy combines what you know, what you do, and how you think. Imagine two people receive identical cars. Driver A, he learned traffic rules, road signs, car maintenance, safe driving. He reaches his destination safely. Driver B, he never learned. He drives fast, ignores warning signs, runs out of fuel, damages the engine, gets into accidents. Both own the same car. The difference was not the car. It was their knowledge and decisions. Money works exactly the same way. Money is the car. Financial literacy is learning how to drive it. Without financial literacy, money can become a source of stress instead of freedom. Now think about two farmers, each receive the same amount of land. Farmer A studies the soil, plants at the right season, waters regularly, removes weeds, protects crops, harvests every year. Farmer B plants randomly, never waters, never protects crops, complains that farming doesn't work. Both started with the same land. The difference was not the land. It was how they managed it. Money behaves like farmland. Financial literacy teaches you how to make money produce more money. Financial literacy is a combination of think of financial literacy as a house with several pillars. 1. Financial knowledge. Understanding concepts such as money, income, expenses, budgeting, saving, investing, debt, inflation, taxes, insurance, risk, assets, liabilities. This answers, what do I know? 2. Financial skills. Knowing is different from doing. Skills include creating a budget, tracking expenses, comparing prices, saving consistently, reading financial information, calculating interest, making investment decisions. This answers, what can I actually do? 3. Financial behavior. Behavior is your daily habits. Examples, saving before spending, avoiding unnecessary debt, paying bills on time, living below your income, investing regularly. Many people know what is right but never do it. Behavior turns knowledge into results. 4. Financial mindset. Mindset is how you think about money. Questions include, do you spend to impress others? Do you think long-term? Do you believe money is a tool or a goal? Can you delay gratification? Are you patient? Mindset influences every financial decision. 5. Financial decision-making. Every day you make choices. Should I buy this? Should I save? Should I invest? Should I borrow? Should I wait? Financial literacy helps you make decisions based on logic instead of emotions. The scope of financial literacy covers almost every area of personal finance. It includes earning money, budgeting, managing spending, saving, emergency funds, banking, credit and debt, investing, retirement planning, insurance and risk management, taxes, inflation, financial goals, wealth building, protecting assets, estate and legacy planning, consumer rights and avoiding scams. Notice that financial literacy is much broader than investing. Investing is only one part. Difference between someone who is financially literate and someone who isn't. The person who has financially literate plans before spending, uses a budget, saves consistently, understands debt, invests for the future, has financial goals, makes informed decisions, learns continuously. The person who has no financial literacy spends without planning, doesn't know where money goes, saves only if money is, borrows without thinking, keeps everything as cash or spends it, lives from one payday to the next, makes emotional decisions, believes money is only about earning more, A common misconception many people believe: if I earn more money, all my financial problems will disappear. This is false. Without financial literacy, higher income can lead to higher spending, more debt, more financial stress, bigger financial mistakes. Income creates opportunity. Financial literacy determines what you do with that opportunity. Financial literacy is the ability to understand and manage money effectively. It combines knowledge, skills, behavior, mindset, and decision-making. It covers the entire journey of money: earning, spending, saving, investing, protecting, and growing wealth. Two people can earn the same income and end up with completely different financial futures because of their financial literacy. Financial literacy is a lifelong skill that helps you make better financial decisions, not just earn more money. These skills nobody taught you in school, and they decide everything. Here's a fact that should bother you more than it usually does. Most people spend 12 or more years in school and graduate having never been taught how to read a pay stub, file a tax return, understand what an interest rate actually costs them, or tell the difference between a good debt and a debt that will quietly follow them for a decade. We're taught the quadratic formula. We're rarely taught how compound interest works, even though one of those will show up on a handful of tests, and the other will show up on every single financial decision for the rest of our lives. That gap has a name. It's called financial literacy, and the difference between having it and not having it is, in very real terms, the difference between money working for you and you working for money indefinitely. Today we're covering 5 things in order: what financial literacy actually is, why it matters as much as it does, real examples of what life looks like with it versus without it, the specific skills that make it up, and finally, the full scope of what this term actually covers, because it's much broader than most people think. Financial literacy is the ability to understand and effectively use financial skills such as budgeting, saving, investing, borrowing, and managing risk to make informed, competent decisions about money. Notice the phrase informed, competent decisions. That's the actual heart of the definition. Financial literacy isn't about being wealthy, and it isn't about being a finance expert who can quote market data. It's about having enough working knowledge to make decisions with your eyes open, instead of by accident, by guesswork, or by copying whatever the people around you happen to do. It helps to break the concept into layers because financial literacy as a single phrase can feel abstract. The first layer is knowledge, understanding concepts like interest, inflation, risk, diversification, credit, and taxes at a functional level. Not academic mastery, functional understanding, the kind that lets you make a decent decision when one is in front of you. The second layer is skill, the practical ability to do things with that knowledge. Build a budget, read a loan agreement, compare 2 financial products, calculate whether a purchase actually fits your income. The third layer, and the one most often left out of the conversation, is behavior. You can know that overspending is harmful and still overspending. Financial literacy, properly understood, includes the behavioral discipline to act on what you know, which is exactly why it overlaps so heavily with mindset, and why knowledge alone, without behavior change, rarely produces different financial outcomes. It's worth being precise about what financial literacy is not. It is not the same as being good at math, though basic arithmetic helps. It is not the same as being wealthy. Plenty of high earners are financially illiterate and end up in serious trouble, and plenty of modest earners are highly financially literate and build real, stable security. And it's not a fixed trait you either have or don't. It's a learnable skill set, the same way reading or driving is a learnable skill set. Nobody is born knowing it, and everybody who has it because they were taught or taught themselves at some point. One more important distinction: financial literacy is not static information you learn once. Tax law changes. Interest rate environments shift. New financial products get invented, some genuinely useful, some designed to be confusing on purpose. Real financial literacy includes the ongoing habit of updating your knowledge as circumstances change. Not a one-time class you took in your 20s and never revisited. So why does this actually matter, beyond the general sense that knowing things is good? It determines whether debt works for you or against you. Debt itself is neutral, a mortgage that lets you build equity in a home, or a business loan that lets you generate income, can be genuinely productive. But without financial literacy, people frequently can't distinguish productive debt from destructive debt, and end up carrying high-interest consumer debt for purchases that lost their value the moment they were made. The debt doesn't care whether you understood the terms. It compounds either way. It determines your vulnerability to financial harm. People with low financial literacy are measurably more susceptible to predatory lending, high-fee financial products, and outright scams, simply because they lack the baseline knowledge to recognize when something is a bad deal. Financial literacy functions, in a very real sense, as a form of self-defense. It determines whether your money grows or quietly erodes. Inflation isn't dramatic. It's slow and largely invisible day to day. Without understanding it, money sitting in a low-interest account can lose real purchasing power year after year, without anything appearing to go wrong on the surface. Financial literacy is what allows someone to notice that quiet erosion and do something about it before it becomes a serious problem. It determines the quality of major life decisions. Buying a home, choosing between job offers with different benefit structures, deciding how to fund an education, planning for a family, nearly every major life decision has a significant financial dimension. People with financial literacy tend to evaluate these decisions with a clearer picture of the actual long-term cost and benefit. People without it tend to evaluate them primarily on gut feeling or immediate affordability, missing consequences that only show up years later. It determines your ability to handle a crisis. Financially literate people are more likely to have built some kind of emergency reserve and to understand their options, insurance, negotiation, restructuring, when something goes wrong. A job loss or a medical bill hits someone with financial literacy, and someone without it very differently, even at identical income levels, because the literate person has usually built structural protection in advance. It compounds across generations. Financial habits and knowledge get passed down, often unconsciously, the same way limiting beliefs do. A financially literate parent is far more likely to raise a financially literate child, simply through everyday exposure, conversations about money, modeled behavior, direct teaching. This means financial literacy isn't just an individual advantage. It's a multi-generational one. Put simply, financial literacy doesn't guarantee wealth, but its absence makes financial stability significantly harder to achieve and dramatically easier to lose, regardless of how much money is coming in. Let's make this concrete with a few realistic scenarios. None of these are about intelligence or effort. They're about whether specific financial knowledge was present or absent at the moment a decision got made. Example 1. The credit card. Someone with low financial literacy gets approved for their first credit card and treats the credit limit as available spending money, rather than a loan with a cost attached. They carry a balance, pay the minimum each month because that's the number the statement highlights, and don't fully register that the remaining balance is accruing interest daily. Over a few years, they've paid substantially more than the original purchases were worth, in interest alone, without ever consciously deciding to take on that cost. Someone with financial literacy treats the same credit card differently. They understand that a credit limit is not income, that carrying a balance means paying a real, calculable cost for the convenience, and they pay the statement in full each cycle specifically to avoid that cost. Same product, same starting point, dramatically different outcome, driven entirely by whether the underlying mechanics were understood. Example 2. The first real paycheck and retirement savings. Someone without financial literacy starts a new job, sees an option to contribute to a retirement account, finds the paperwork confusing and skips it, planning to deal with it later, once they understand it better. Later doesn't arrive for several years. Because retirement growth depends heavily on time in the market, those early skipped years, even at a small contribution amount, represent a disproportionately large loss of eventual growth, one that's very difficult to make up later, even with larger contributions. Someone with financial literacy understands, even at a basic level, that starting small and starting early tends to outperform starting large and starting late, because of how compounding works over time. They enroll immediately, even at a modest contribution rate, and let time do a large share of the work. The difference in outcome, decades later, often isn't explained by income. It's explained by a handful of years of head start. Example 3. The Great Deal Purchase. Someone without financial literacy sees a large purchase offered with no interest for 18 months and focuses only on the immediate affordability of the monthly payment without reading the terms closely. If the balance isn't fully paid off before the promotional period ends, many of these offers apply interest retroactively to the entire original amount, a detail that's often in the fine print, not the advertisement. They end up owing significantly more than expected, seemingly out of nowhere. Someone with financial literacy reads past the headline offer, understands what deferred interest specifically means, and either pays the balance off within the promotional window deliberately, or avoids the offer altogether if they can't realistically do that. The purchase price was identical for both people. The outcome wasn't. Example 4. Reacting to a market downturn. Someone without financial literacy sees their investment account drop sharply during a downturn, panics, and sells everything to stop the bleeding, converting a temporary paper loss into a permanent, realized one, and missing the recovery that historically tends to follow downturns over time. Someone with financial literacy understands that market volatility is a normal, expected part of long-term investing, not a sign that something has gone uniquely wrong, and assuming their underlying financial plan hasn't changed, stays invested through the volatility, in many cases even increasing contributions while prices are lower. Same market event, radically different result, based entirely on whether the mechanics of investing were understood in advance before the emotional moment arrived. Example 5. Negotiating a salary or a major purchase. Someone without financial literacy accepts the first number offered for a salary, a car, a home, largely because they don't have a clear framework for what fair value looks like, or how to construct a counteroffer, over a career, or over several major purchases. This pattern compounds into a substantial gap compared to someone who negotiates even moderately effectively. Someone with financial literacy has done enough homework to know roughly what a fair number looks like, understands their own leverage, and is comfortable asking for more or shopping around not out of aggression, but because they understand that the first offer is a starting position, not a fixed fact. Look at the pattern across all 5 examples. In every single case, the two people had access to the exact same product, the exact same offer, the exact same moment. The only variable that changed the outcome was whether specific, learnable financial knowledge was present at the moment the decision got made. Let's get specific about what this skill set actually includes. Financial literacy isn't one skill, it's a cluster of related, learnable competencies. Budgeting and cash flow management. The ability to track what's coming in and going out, categorize spending honestly, and plan ahead rather than reacting after the fact. This is the foundation everything else is built on. Without visibility into cash flow, every other financial skill operates on guesswork. Understanding credit and debt, knowing how interest rates work, what a credit score represents and how it's built, the real cost of carrying debt over time, and the meaningful difference between debt used to acquire an appreciating or income-producing asset versus debt used for a depreciating purchase. Saving strategy. Beyond simply saving money, This includes understanding why an emergency reserve exists specifically to prevent debt during a crisis, and how to set concrete, structured savings goals rather than vague intentions to save more. Basic investing knowledge. Understanding fundamental concepts like compound growth, diversification, risk tolerance, and the difference between short-term trading and long-term investing. Enough to make informed choices or ask informed questions, even without becoming a professional investor. Understanding taxes. A working sense of how income is taxed, what deductions and credits are available, and how major financial decisions, a home purchase, a retirement contribution, a side income, interact with tax obligations. Risk management and insurance literacy. Understanding what different types of insurance actually protect against, and being able to assess whether a given policy or coverage level makes sense for your actual situation, rather than either overinsuring out of anxiety or underinsuring out of avoidance. Reading and understanding financial agreements. The practical ability to actually read a loan agreement, a lease, a credit card disclosure, or an investment prospectus closely enough to understand the real terms, not just the headline pitch. Goal setting and financial planning. The ability to translate broad life goals, buying a home, retiring at a certain point, funding an education, into concrete numbers-based plans with actual milestones, rather than treating them as vague hopes. Behavioral self-awareness. This is the layer most lists leave out, and it might be the most important one. Understanding your own emotional and psychological patterns around money well enough to recognize when a decision is being driven by fear, social pressure, or impulse, rather than by the plan you actually set for yourself. Notice that none of these require an advanced degree. Every one of them is learnable through books, courses, practice, and often most effectively direct, hands-on experience with your own real numbers. Finally, let's zoom out, because financial literacy is often talked about as though it's just personal budgeting, but the actual scope is much wider than that. Personal scope. This is the most familiar layer, an individual's ability to manage their own income, spending, saving, debt, and investments across their lifetime, from a first paycheck through retirement. Household scope. Financial literacy extends beyond a single person to how a household or family manages shared finances. Joint budgeting, shared goals, financial communication between partners, and decisions about how to raise financially literate children. A lot of financial conflict within relationships stems less from disagreement about goals and more from mismatched financial literacy levels between partners. Life stage scope. What financial literacy requires shifts significantly across a lifetime. A 22-year-old's most relevant financial literacy needs, understanding credit, starting to save, look very different from a 55-year-old's, who's more focused on retirement drawdown strategy, healthcare cost planning, and estate considerations. Genuine financial literacy includes recognizing that the relevant knowledge changes as life stages change, not just acquiring a fixed set of facts once. Economic and civic scope. On a broader level, financial literacy includes enough understanding of how the wider economy works, inflation, interest rate policy, how markets generally function, to make sense of financial news and its practical implications for personal decisions, rather than either ignoring it entirely or reacting to headlines without context. Digital and modern financial scope. The scope of financial literacy has expanded substantially in the last 2 decades to include digital banking, online payment security, understanding newer and often more complex financial products, and a healthy skepticism toward financial content and advice encountered on social media, which is frequently oversimplified, incentivized, or simply wrong. Entrepreneurial and business scope. For anyone running a business, freelancing, or earning outside a traditional paycheck, the scope widens further to include cash flow management for irregular income, understanding business versus personal finances, and basic tax obligations specific to self-employment. long-term and generational scope. Finally, financial literacy at its widest scope includes long-term planning, retirement, estate basics, and the intentional transmission of financial knowledge and healthy financial behavior to the next generation. So the skill set doesn't have to be rebuilt entirely from zero in every generation. Seen at this full scope, financial literacy stops looking like a narrow personal finance topic and starts looking like something closer to a basic form of civic and life literacy. As fundamental, in practical terms, as being able to read a contract or understand a medical instruction. So to bring it all together, financial literacy is the working knowledge, practical skill, and behavioral discipline to make informed decisions with money. It matters because, again and again, identical financial situations produce radically different outcomes depending entirely on whether that knowledge was present at the moment a decision got made. It's built from a specific, learnable set of skills, not talent, not luck. And its real scope stretches from a single household budget all the way out to multi-generational financial habits and basic economic understanding. None of it requires starting with money. It requires starting with the decision to actually learn the mechanics that have been quietly running your financial life the entire time, whether you understood them or not. If there's one skill from this list you know you're missing, that's probably exactly the right time to start. Remember, are the architecture of your financial literacy. Master it, implement it, and turn ideas and knowledge into actions. Financial literacy is the possession of the skills, knowledge, and behavioral discipline required to make informed, effective, and strategic decisions with monetary resources. It is not simply knowing how money works or understanding basic math. Financial literacy is an operational framework, a system of decision-making that allows an individual to navigate cash flow, manage risk, leverage debt, acquire assets, and preserve capital across every stage of life. Financial literacy can be broken down into three core layers. Financial awareness, understanding basic concepts such as interest rates, inflation, income taxes, compound growth, and debt mechanics. Financial capability, having the skills and behavioral habits to build a budget, track expenses, manage debt, and open investment accounts. Financial decision-making, the cognitive ability to evaluate choices under uncertainty, distinguishing between short-term emotional desires and long-term financial health. Think of financial literacy as a language. If you don't speak the language of money, every contract, loan offer, investment vehicle, and sales pitch you encounter will sound like noise, and you will consistently lose value to those who do speak it. Here are 4 major reasons why financial literacy is non-negotiable in the modern world. 1. Protection against predatory systems. Financial markets are asymmetrical. Lenders, credit card companies, buy now pay later services, and high-risk speculative platforms spend millions studying consumer psychology. If you do not understand compound interest or hidden fee structures, you become an easy target. Financial literacy acts as an intellectual shield against predatory lending and financial exploitation. 2. Mitigating systemic and personal volatility. Economic cycles bring recessions, inflation spikes, tech disruptions, and layoffs. On a personal level, unexpected medical bills or vehicle breakdowns happen to everyone. Without financial literacy, specifically emergency fund planning and cash flow management, a single minor disruption can cascade into a permanent financial crisis. 3. Mental health and quality of life studies consistently show that financial strain is one of the leading causes of chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and marital breakdown across the globe. When you control your money, you eliminate a massive baseline level of daily panic. Money can't buy happiness directly, but financial security removes a tremendous amount of unhappiness. Financial literacy is not a destination. It is an ongoing practice. You do not need a degree in finance or statistics to master your money. You only need consistency, basic arithmetic, and emotional discipline. Start small today. Track every dollar you spend over the next 30 days. Build a $1,000 starter emergency buffer. Automate your savings and investment contributions so your future self gets paid first. Money makes a terrible master but a phenomenal servant. When you master financial literacy, you take back control of your time, your choices, and your future. The three pillars of financial literacy. Financial literacy is generally built on three core pillars. 1. Earning and managing income, understanding how money comes in, wages, salary, business income, investment income, and having the practical skills to budget, track cash flow, and control spending relative to that income. This pillar is the foundation. Without visibility into what's coming in and going out, nothing else can be planned effectively. 2. Saving and investing, the knowledge and discipline to convert unspent income into growth, understanding compound interest, risk versus return, diversification, and the different vehicles available, retirement accounts, stocks, real estate, etc. This is the pillar that actually builds long-term wealth rather than just maintaining day-to-day stability. 3. Debt and credit management, understanding how borrowing works, interest rates, credit scores, the difference between productive debt, used to acquire an asset, and consumptive debt, used for depreciating purchases, and knowing how to use credit as a tool rather than a trap. Some frameworks add a fourth pillar, risk management/protection, insurance, emergency funds. Since managing income, savings, and debt well can still be undone by an unprotected financial shock. Want the full script version of this, structured the same way as the others?